Throughout the 1950s, Sandra Dee emerged as one of the era's most prominent pinups, captivating audiences with her roles in beloved films such as Gidget, Imitation of Life, A Summer Place, and Come September. Despite her on-screen success, the blonde beauty did not have an easy time with family and fame, a beautiful love story but ending tragically with many hidden things behind it. Join us to find out Sandra Dee Marriage's marriage and what destroyed it. Sandra Dee's cruel childhood. According to biography, Sandra Dee, originally named Alexandra Zook, was born on April 23, 1942, in Bayonne, New Jersey. Following her divorce from Dee's father when Dee was just an infant, her mother, Mary, directed an excessive amount of attention and energy towards her daughter. Her upbringing had been shaped by her controlling mother, Mary, who meticulously fed Sandra until she turned 6. Vanity Fair reports that Mary even steered Dee into a modeling career when Dee was 8 years old. By the tender age of 9, Sandra was grappling with anorexia, subsisting on little more than lettuce for an entire year. Unfortunately, Sandra's situation took a darker turn in 1950. That year, Mary married Eugene Duvong, a charismatic real estate developer who happened to be 40 years her senior. Disturbingly, Duvong began to inappropriately touch Sandra when she was just 5. He even insisted that she sleep between him and Mary in their bed, and he once quipped to Mary that he had married her just to get to Sandy. These tumultuous events are chronicled in the book Dream Lovers, The Magnificent Shattered Lives of Bobby Darin and Sandra Dee, penned by Dodd. Sandra never confided in her mother about the abuse. By the time I was 11, I knew it wasn't right. But what could I do? Tell my mother. I figured she knew, she said. The shame I felt was awful. I used to tell myself, that's a stranger who's doing this to me. That's how I rationalized it. Despite facing such adversity, Sandra mourned when her stepfather died of a heart attack in 1956, just days before she was set to take the screen test that would propel her to Hollywood. A year later, she made her film debut and almost overnight became a star, showcasing her talent in comedies like Gidget and melodramas such as A Summer Place and Imitation of Life. In 1958, Sandra was recognized as the #1 star of Tomorrow. The Shining Career of Sandra. In 1978, a beloved film made its debut in the American cinema, capturing the hearts of audiences and maintaining its popularity to this day. That film is the musical Grease, a nostalgic portrayal of teenage life in the late 1950s, complete with bobby socks, convertible cars, and rock and roll. The charismatic John Travolta takes the lead role, embodying the essence of cool and becoming an idol for many American youths, and, intriguingly, young people in Eastern Europe, eager to embrace Western trends and rebel against societal norms. Opposite Travolta, the talented Australian-born pop singer Olivia Newton, John shines as Sandy Olsen, a sweet and proper American teen who undergoes a transformation from innocence to embracing a more rebellious lifestyle influenced by the charismatic Danny portrayed by Travolta. Many viewers of Grease mistakenly believe Sandy Olsen to be synonymous with Sandra Dee, unaware that the real Sandra Dee was a prominent Hollywood actress during the early 1960s. Sandra Dee began her career as a model at just 12 years old in New York City. She quickly transitioned to the silver screen, making her film debut at 15 and signing a long-term contract with United International Pictures in Hollywood by the age of 17. From 1960 to 1967, she was married to the renowned singer Bobby Darin. In an era dominated by rebellious icons like Elvis Presley and James Dean, Sandra Dee represented a wholesome and virtuous image of American teenager life akin to the roles portrayed by Doris Day in numerous films. She starred in a string of successful movies such as Gidget in 1959, A Summer Place, and Tammy and the Doctor in 1963, embodying the charming ingenue on the brink of romantic maturity. However, as societal norms shifted in the 1970s, the innocent teenager archetype waned in popularity, and Sandra Dee's career faced challenges as she struggled to break free from her typecast image. Nevertheless, her legacy endures, immortalized through her iconic roles and symbolizing an era of American youth culture. Though she later ventured into more serious dramatic roles in films like The Dunwich Horror in 1970, Sandra Dee's portrayal of the innocent teenager remains etched in the collective memory, especially through the lens of the timeless classic Grease, Bobby Darin, the man who changed Sandra's life. Born Walden Robert Casado on May 14, 1936, in the Bronx, Darin faced health challenges due to rheumatic fever, but his talent was evident early on. Encouraged by his mother, Polly, a former vaudeville performer, Bobby immersed himself in music and literature, learning piano and drums. Motivated by a doctor's grim prognosis, Bobby pursued success fervently. He attended Bronx High School of Science but left college to focus on show business. Despite setbacks with Decca Records, Bobby found success with Atco Records, producing hits like Splish Splash and Dream Lover. His frequent TV appearances and tours propelled him toward stardom, fulfilling his dreams. After establishing himself as a prominent rock and roll star, Bobby Darin surprised Ahmet and the team at Atco Records by expressing his desire to record an album of standards in the style of Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, and Dean Martin. Initially met with skepticism, Darin believed that rock and roll was unpredictable and lacked longevity, aspiring instead to be an all-around entertainer. Despite strong opposition, he struck a deal with Ahmet to fund the album, That's All, using royalties from his rock hits. Released in 1959, the album catapulted Bobby Darin to new heights of artistry, earning him global fame and critical acclaim. The iconic track Mac the Knife topped the charts for 10 weeks and sold over 2 million copies, while Beyond the Sea reached number 6 and became one of Darin's most recognizable songs. His success extended beyond music, winning a Record of the Year Grammy Award and a Grammy for Best New Artist in 1959. The album also broadened Darin's audience into the adult swing genre, elevating him from a mere rock and roll singer. Known for his commanding presence on stage, Darin captivated audiences in prestigious nightclubs across the country, earning praise from icons like Liz Taylor and even serving as a mentor to Diana Ross. As the early 1960s unfolded, Darin ventured into film, meeting his future wife Sandra Dee on the set of Come September in 1960. His versatile acting skills earned critical acclaim in films like Pressure Point and Captain Newman, M.D., for which he received a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination. Simultaneously, Darin explored folk and country music, showcasing his songwriting talents with hits like Things, You're the Reason I'm Living, and 18 Yellow Roses. By 1964, Bobby Darin had reached the pinnacle of the entertainment industry, realizing many of his ambitious goals. With the arrival of the Beatles in the U.S. in 1964, the music and pop culture landscape underwent a significant transformation. Bobby Darin and his contemporaries like Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, and Frank Sinatra found themselves needing to adapt to the new trends. In response, Darin shifted his focus to the business side of music, establishing his publishing company, TM Music, in 1964. He decided to take a break from touring to spend more time with his family. Partly influenced by a fear of experiencing the empty seats syndrome common among entertainers. The whirlwind love of Bobby Darin and Sandra Dee. Sandra's path crossed with Darin's on the set of the 1961 film Come September. By that time, Sandra had already achieved stardom, thanks to her roles in films like A Summer Place, 1959, where she starred alongside Troy Donahue. Their connection was swift and intense. The lounge singer had captured Sandra's heart, leading them to rush into marriage. Remarkably, they tied the knot even before the movie hit theaters. The studio, aware that Sandra was still a teenager, opted to keep their union under wraps. Bobby, then 24 years old and brimming with confidence, apparently left an impression on Sandra, though not always a positive one. Sandra often felt exhausted. Her doctor prescribed amphetamines to combat fatigue, but unfortunately, she developed an addiction to them. Sandra candidly shared, "I zipped through the day and the only thing that could bring me down was a drink." In 1967, the couple legally separated, yet they managed to maintain an amicable relationship. Sandra even revealed, "We continued living together after the divorce." But Sandra's marriage to Bobby, at the age of 19, shifted her focus away from her film career. Bobby expected Sandra to accompany him to his nightly shows in Las Vegas and socialize with his friends afterward in the casino. "I had no life, and we had no life together," said Sandra, who turned to heavy drinking and gambling to ease her loneliness. "Then, to make things more complicated, I became pregnant. However, it wasn't meant to be. She experienced the first of 6 miscarriages due to the effects of anorexia. Bobby was ill-equipped to handle any of these challenges. As a child, he had contracted rheumatic fever, which damaged his heart valves. His family had treated him delicately after being told by a doctor that he was unlikely to live beyond his 16th birthday. This prognosis fueled Bobby's fierce ambition. "He lived 12 lifetimes before he met me," singer Connie Francis, who dated Bobby before Sandra, tells Closer. "He was determined to make it before he was 25 because he had no." In December 1961, they welcomed their son, Dodd Mitchell Darin, into the world. Despite their deep affection, their relationship faced turmoil, exacerbated by Sandra's battles with addiction. Sandra's drinking escalated, and she began causing scenes with Bobby to stir things up, she admitted. Meanwhile, Bobby's jealousy sometimes got the best of him. He left in 1963, accusing Sandra of having an affair with Tammy and the Doctor co-star, Peter Fonda. In 1963, the immaturity of the Darins came back to haunt them. According to Dodd, Darin grew convinced that Dee was romantically involved with her co-star, Peter Fonda, from Tammy and the Doctor. In response, he had someone inform her over the phone that he wished to end their marriage. Dee vehemently denied any affair, asserting that they were simply colleagues with a close working relationship. Although they reconciled, their marriage finally ended in 1966 after Bobby witnessed Sandra talking to Warren Beatty at a party. "It was all very trivial, but it was the first time Bobby saw me with a handsome man who had a reputation in Hollywood," Sandra recalled. Strangely, the divorce and co-parenting their child eventually brought Sandra and Bobby closer than they had ever been during their marriage. Sandra finally confided in Bobby about the abuse she suffered at the hands of her stepfather. "Bobby cried," she remembered. Bobby also turned to Sandra when his health began to deteriorate. "Bobby kept coming back, and always with an illness," Sandra said. She was devastated when he passed away after heart surgery in 1971. "My mom never recovered," Dodd said. Despite the dysfunction in his family, Dodd managed to avoid his parents' fate. He got married, became a father of 2, and helped Sandra achieve a degree of sobriety before her death in 2005. "My parents overcame tremendous obstacles," Dodd reflected. He named his eldest daughter Alexa after his mom, who was born Alexandra Zuck. "I was fortunate to have shared many good years with my grandma before she passed," Alexa remarked. "My grandma and grandpa continue to inspire me every day." The truth behind Bobby and Sandra's breakup was the deep-seated animosity that her mother had. One of the rumors about the cause of Bobby and Sandra's breakup was the deep-seated animosity that her mother, Mary, held towards Darin. Mary's disapproval and resentment towards Bobby stemmed from various factors, which ultimately caused significant tension within the marriage. As previously mentioned, Mary had always exerted a significant amount of control over Sandra's life, shaping her into the epitome of the ideal child star. With Bobby Darin entering the scene, Mary perceived him as a threat to her influence and authority over her daughter. She resented his presence and the influence he wielded in Sandra's life, seeing him as a potential challenger to her control. Mary's resentment towards Bobby was further fueled by her belief that he was pulling Sandra away from her and intruding upon their close-knit mother-daughter relationship. From another perspective, Mary has officially spoken out about this rumor. Does Mary really hate her son-in-law? Mary's first impression of Alex Bobby. Despite Bobby's previous admiration for Sandra, there was a palpable tension between them when they first met in Rome. Mary, mother of Sandra, felt sorry for both of them, especially Bobby, who appeared to be lonely. Seeking to bridge the gap, Mary invited Bobby and his brother-in-law up to their suite for a drink, which marked the beginning of a new dynamic. Bobby started visiting almost daily, often taking Mary, Sandra, and their friends out to dinner. However, Sandra and Bobby's relationship remained strained, with frequent arguments during the 3 months of filming. Mary attempted to mediate, hoping to bring peace between them. Then, one evening, just weeks before the film's completion, Sandra entered the living room dressed in a new black dress, ready for dinner with a friend. Bobby, with an air of authority, abruptly asked her to join him for dinner alone. Sandra hesitated, glancing at her mother and the friend waiting expectantly. Despite Mary's encouragement, Sandra chose to leave with Bobby, stepping out of her mother's close circle and into a new chapter with Bobby Darin. Mary was genuinely fond of Bobby. Despite any differences of opinion others may have had about him during their time on set. She often expressed her admiration for Bobby's wit, charm, and talent in several letters to me. "He's quite intelligent, too," she wrote once. "I really hope you get to meet him when we return." Contrary to what people might say, Mary was thrilled when Sandra and Bobby started seeing each other. She even went as far as to inform Bobby about Sandra's favorite flowers, resulting in regular deliveries of yellow roses for Sandra. However, it was when Bobby began to assert his intentions, declaring his desire to marry Sandra, that Mary started to realize the seriousness of the situation. Although any mother would see Bobby as a good catch, the idea of marriage for Sandra at the age of 18 had never crossed Mary's mind. The shock news for Mary. As Bobby concluded his role in Rome and departed a few days ahead of Mary and Sandra, he surprised Sandra with a gift over the phone, which she suspected was a ring. Upon their arrival in New York, while Mary and a friend headed to the Drake Hotel, Bobby and Sandra spent their remaining time together before Bobby's departure for Hollywood. It turned out that Bobby had business to attend to in Hollywood, including renting a house in Bel Air for the newlyweds, whom he would bring back just 10 days later. The speed at which things progressed showcased Bobby's dynamic nature, which undoubtedly contributed to his remarkable success. His pursuit of Sandra, a sweet and sheltered beauty, as his bride was seen by everyone involved as a natural and happy ending to their story, despite temporary heartaches and confusion. The temporary heartache, however, was felt most keenly by Mary. It wasn't solely because Sandra was about to become a bride, but rather because of the rapid pace of events. Sandra was Mary's whole world, and as Sandra transitioned into young womanhood and grew restless, Mary found herself puzzled and concerned, as did their friends. And thus, as Act the Third began in Rome, the situation remained unresolved. Mary blesses Sandra and Bobby's marriage. Mary found herself genuinely happy for Sandra's engagement despite the relatively short time Sandra and Bobby had known each other. Sandra's radiant happiness was undeniable, shining brightly like a shooting star and spreading joy to those around her. Mary encouraged Sandra to savor this special time of being engaged and in love, even though underneath her supportive words she harbored some concerns. She wondered if they would wait for Sandra's new film to be completed before tying the knot, and envisioned Sandra walking down the aisle in a beautiful white gown. These thoughts troubled Mary, making her feel somewhat disconnected from her daughter's life for the first time. Reflecting on their past struggles and sacrifices, Mary couldn't help but feel sentimental as she realized that Sandra had moved into a new phase of life, while she herself felt unable to fully embrace it. Ultimately, it was the revelation about the blood test for the marriage license that brought these feelings to a head, signaling a significant turning point in their relationship. Mary had not been informed about the wedding of her daughter. She discovered the news from someone else, which left her feeling blindsided by a whirlwind of emotions, hurt, confusion, and a sense of helplessness. In a desperate need for solitude to process her feelings and figure out her next steps, Mary decided to retreat and spend time alone. For a full day, she grappled with her own inner turmoil in a small motel near Philadelphia. Eventually, amidst her personal agony, Mary had a revelation. Sandra's happiness was paramount, overshadowing any personal pain or loneliness she might feel. Despite missing the wedding, which occurred in the early hours of the morning at a friend's home with Bobby's family present, Mary came to terms with the situation. She hadn't been aware of the wedding plans, and in her absence, she hadn't imagined it would take place. The home they once shared must have been a difficult place for Mary to enter after Sandra's departure. They were so tightly bonded, both in their work and affection. However, Mary's friends have since surrounded her with support. Her open house receptions are bustling with adoring friends, and she effortlessly charms everyone with her bright smile, warm hospitality, and outgoing personality. Despite her outward cheerfulness, there's a hint of longing in her words when she mentions Sandra. Mary desires to be welcomed back. She eagerly talks about launching herself into the business world, occasionally letting slip her yearning for Sandra's presence. She might mention seeing Sandra driving away in her new white car or starting her new film, Tammy Tell Me True, with a smile that hides her underlying disappointment. Yet Mary remains resilient, busying herself in the kitchen or simply enjoying a good cup of coffee. Even when she hears Mac the Knife on the radio, she gives no indication of her inner feelings. On the day Tammy began filming, Sandra received a single yellow rose in a crystal bud vase with a card that read, "All my love, Mother." Sandra carefully read the card and immediately decided to call her mother, hurrying off to the set telephone. During my visit with Mary, we managed to include the bride in our little circle through a phone call. As Mary and I chatted on one end, Sandra joined us from the other. "What are you doing?" I asked, to which Sandra replied, "Cooking," leading to fits of laughter from all of us. Sandra cooking was quite a surprise. At this moment, all Mary desires is to be welcomed back into the warmth of being needed and accepted by Bobby and loved by Sandra. She's content to step back and bask in their happiness. Mary Duvon endured a personal struggle to achieve this victory of love over her own desires, and nothing will sway her from this path. She speaks only kind words of Bobby, praising his talents, and to Sandra, she offers the greatest gift a mother can give: the freedom to pursue her own path. As we conclude our exploration into the real reason that shattered Sandra Dee's marriage, one question lingers. How do you think Sandra's life might have unfolded differently if not for the turbulence caused by this affair? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more captivating stories like this.